Yeah, that's my concern too.
Thank you.
Ready? Great.
Where's our red light? Are we live?
I know, I really go.
Welcome to the Centerville City Council meeting of October 1st. Welcome to October, held at Centerville City Hall. We just completed a work session where we discussed three things of importance to the city, and that I felt was very productive. Let's start with the roll call, starting to my far left to see who we have here from the council.
Meekum here?
It's here.
Ivy here.
McEwen present.
Fillmore present.
All five council members are present, and thank you for being here. We welcome anyone that's joining us. Let's start with a prayer thought by Councilman McEwen.
So I was struck the other day about some of the materials that we read and that we enjoy, and I've always enjoyed reading science fiction. One of the reasons I enjoy science fiction is because it's one of the safe places where authors are able to explore some really interesting concepts in society and do it in a way that allows us to think without being threatened. And I was thinking about one of my favorite authors, whose name is Robert Heinlein, and he wrote a book in 1959 called Starship Trooper. And in that book, he postulated that in a future society, that there would be franchise given to people who served their country. So if you had served in the military, you had the right to vote. If you didn't serve in the military, you did not have that franchise. And it was a book that created quite a bit of stir at the time, and it comes up about this time of year when people are talking about voting rights and elections. And it occurs to me that the concept that he really brought out is that in America, we have been given franchise to vote with no strings. Just by virtue of being born and attaining a certain age, we have that right and given to us. But many of us don't exercise that franchise. And if you look at even with the mail-in ballots, where all you have to do is open an envelope, color in a circle, put it back, and put it right back in that envelope and into your mail, we still don't have a high level of participation. And I find it kind of tragic that even as we make it that simple, that we don't do it. When I look at what that right has given to us and what we've been able to accomplish with those rights, it's a tragedy to me that doesn't happen more often. I look around the world today and some of the places that are crying for freedom and democracy to the point of having their residents killed in what they would consider legal street protests, they're not going to get the same rights that we ignore. So as we come into another election season, which people refer to as an off-year election, which is always a strange term to me, I encourage everyone, exercise your franchise. You don't have to fight to have that. Somebody else did that for you. And if we don't, we are being disrespectful of those who've gone before and those we expect us to lead.
Thank you. If you all would rise with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the point of a council meeting where we have an open session where anyone's welcome to come up with either of these two microphones and speak what may be on their mind, trying to limit their comments to 2 to 3 minutes. So that open session is now available for anyone that might like to do that. Seeing nobody ready to take advantage of the open session, we'll move to the business section of the meeting. The first item that we have on the business section, this is a public hearing item on the Legacy Lands Commercial Subdivision Amendment. I think Lisa wants to introduce that to us from staff. Lisa Romney, our city attorney.
Or we can push it to Corey Snyder. Maybe.
I'll delegate that to Corey Snyder.
Sorry.
Attorney's delegating to you. Wow.
Let's push it to Corey. Corey, that's why you're here?
That is why I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But that's okay. I don't mind being ignored at all.
don't mind that at all.
It's like a dream come true.
Yeah. Hopefully this is pretty simple. It's, the Legacy Land subdivision was recently recorded. The amendment that they're requesting is to deal with utility easements. These are the side easements on the lot. There's supposed to be 3 utility easements, one in the front, and then one on the side and one on the rear. And you can decide on the side lot lines where you'd like to place them. And they placed them in a position on lot 3, or lot 5 and lot 1. And they're on the south side of the subdivision next to the UDOT shed property, if you recall driving out there anytime recently. They originally chose that south boundary line, but if you notice on the shape of the lots, they're long and narrow. So to give them some space, they'd like to take the lot line between the 2 lots, take that whole south boundary and switch the side lot lines to from a east-west to a north-south. So their original, let's see, get to 5. The original lot, the utility easement would have run down this side lot line. So this would be the rear and the side. They're going to switch it to this place. This is all a utility easement. And so if services were needed to the UDOT property, which we don't think anytime soon, but if UDOT property was to go away and redeveloped, this easement would serve into that property, as well as any future easements on 1300 West. So it meets the ordinance, and it just gives them some width and room for the buildings and so forth for those lots. So they'd like to switch it before they get any utilities or buildings in place. And this is your decision, so the plat amendment goes directly to the council. It bypasses the planning commission.
Questions right now for Corey?
Didn't, the last thing you said confused me.
Last thing I said,
Yeah, that.
this is your decision. It's a plat
But they
amendment.
haven't, but it's been through the planning commission and they've endorsed it.
No, the planning commission already recommended the plat and the configuration that the easements were platted. When you do a plat amendment, it directly just goes to the city council. And so it bypasses the planning commission in this case. And so that's just your decision. You don't have a
And
recommendation.
you don't see any negative problems with this?
No, they could have picked these sides during the platting process, and there's no utilities in yet, so they're just exchanging one requirement for the other requirement.
Mr. Smith, right?
Yes.
You're the applicant. Do you want to say anything?
No, we just made that change earlier. And
Come up the mic. Thank you. Identify yourself for the record too. Thanks.
we had decided to do that before, but the engineer didn't make the change, so we had to go back and correct just a problem that happened early in the planning stages.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Smith here before I open public hearing? Like I said, this is a public hearing matter, so that means that the public can weigh in on this. So I now open this matter for a public hearing. Seeing nobody coming forth for the public hearing, I will close the public hearing and see if there's any further comments or questions from council for either staff or the applicant.
I would motion to approve the subdivision plat for Legacy Lands Commercial Subdivision located at approximately 1270 North, 1300 West.
Second.
Altering the location of the public utility easements, subject to conditions based on the findings set forth in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Did you hear that light second, Leah? Okay. Any further discussion or debate? If not, I'll start a roll call vote on this matter, starting with Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Rather quick public hearing there, Gordon. All right, thank you. Let's move to item number 2. This is a police vehicle purchase, and with Chief Child is here. Do you want us to tell us about it at all, or are we good with what we have, Chief? Come on up.
So this is just part of our regular process of updating vehicles. This will replace a 2013 Explorer, and it's a police package vehicle. It's actually will be assigned to me. When we priced this out, it came out about $200. There was a $200 difference between the F-150 and a Explorer package, this being $200 more, but the resale value is much higher on these. So we thought we'd give it a try.
Are we planning to equip it with any other gear since you've now got a bed? What else are we throwing in there?
Yeah, so it's gonna require a tray to go in the bed and a cover, just a, what are those covers called?
Tonneau cover.
Tonic, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Great. Thanks, Chief. So, looking for a motion for approval of the police vehicle purchase.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We okay? We need a roll call vote. Am I right there, Lisa?
Roll call.
Roll call? Okay.
Aye.
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 Thank you. That motion passes 5-0. All right, next item on the agenda is municipal code amendment, voter participation areas. And Corey, I'd like you to weigh in on this one. Lisa, I got it right this time?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a proposed ordinance for council consideration creating 4 voter participation areas. It will be dividing the city into these voter participation areas based upon some state statute that was adopted by the legislature this year. And it requires the city of our size to divide the city into these voter participation areas that need to be of approximately equal size and population, and they also need to follow the voting district boundaries. And they will be used if any of the citizens want to propose an initiative or a referendum. Current statute requires that they receive a certain percentage of all the votes in order, number of signatures for that to move forward. But with these voter participation areas, the initiative and referenda they would also have to obtain signatures in that same percentage in at least 75% of the voter participation areas. So the legislation was intended to address single neighborhood issues and saying that more of the city has to vote on these types of things for them to move forward. So it's not something that we have a choice about. The decision's been made at the legislative level, and we have to adopt these voter participation areas by January 1st of 2020. And then 2 years later, we have to remember to adopt them again. And then 10 years after that, we need to review it. So that'll be fun calendaring for the review. But so Davis County, given the requirements of the statute that said, they have to be equal population and they have to follow the voting precinct lines, Davis County took the lead, which we appreciate, using their engineers to create these voter participation areas for every city in Davis County. And so they sent out a county-wide map, and I put that in your packet so you can see what they've proposed for all the cities within the county. So as staff, we are recommending that we approve these voter participation areas as proposed by Davis County. We're not required to, but I like the fact that a third party, an objective third party, created these voter participation areas. So we're not making it a political issue. They've looked at the city. They follow those voter precinct lines, which is sort of a complicated calculation and mapping. So with that, the statute doesn't say how we have to adopt these, but I decided that to recommend that we actually put it in our ordinance. I initially drafted a resolution, but then when this comes up years from now, someone would have to find that resolution. So I think it's just better to put it in our ordinance. We'll have the map there. If anybody wants to propose an initiative, it's easy to find, less staff work in finding that, and it's readily accessible. So We're just recommending ordinance 2019-20, adopting these voter participation areas by amending some provisions in Title II.
Lisa, oh, go ahead.
Out of curiosity, how come there wouldn't just be the precinct areas, the voter participation areas?
Because they only want us to have 4 and we have 11.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes, so we have more than that. So they've just combined, so the way, if you look at it, the way the county's proposed it is, they've divided Centerville up into 4 voter participation areas, each of those containing 3 voting precincts.
And that came from the state then, that we have to have 4?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, of our size. Larger, first class have to have 8.
Okay, all right, I got it.
So I had one question. In the past, I've understood that the going out and getting signatures to be a percentage of the voters
Yes.
rather than a percentage of the population. Is that still the case with this?
So from what
So
I
are they,
understand,
what I'm not understanding is whether the areas are equal numbers of voters or equal numbers of residents.
so that's, I was just going to clarify, and Lisa, it's, the county did it based on active registered voters, not population. So what you'll see is a difference between the 4, maybe a population of 200 or 300 people, but it's actually based on active participating registered voters, yeah.
So the
So we have-
initiative signature statute is based upon a percentage of the number of
Voters.
active voters. The voter participation area statute is based upon actual population. But I agree with the county that they said, look, we're going to use our voter precinct areas because we think that those correlate to roughly proportional to actual population, so.
And I don't think they do. I think that's dramatically different.
But you won't be able to divide a precinct. So this is as good as, you can't take some from one precinct and put it in another because it has to follow precinct lines.
And tell me again how regularly we review these?
So we have to adopt
years.
it no later than January 1st of 2020, again on January 1st, 2022, and then 10 years, once every 10 years after that, we have to review it.
Could we change it in between those if we wanted to?
Yes.
So if we had some major thing where suddenly we had all the high density become registered voters and it,
Yes, it seems reasonable
Counted the
yes,
balance.
to review these and compare populations and voter precinct. But again, it will be problematic. I mean, it takes some calculations to change that.
But just being very practical about this and the way that this has come down and the way it's structured, I'm just going to be very flip about it. The likelihood of another citizen initiative in the state of Utah is about as likely as a constitutional convention because of these requirements and the way they're structured, and it will become extremely problematic for a citizen-driven initiative that does not have a ton of money or uproar to actually make it through these requirements. So I'm not as concerned about the voter participation areas per se. Just, to me, it's an academic exercise, but I could be reading it completely wrong, but right now that's how I feel about it.
it does look that way.
So
Any other questions?
it's not going to happen, don't worry about it.
I wouldn't worry about a
sure we
street
can't.
here or there because it's going, if we're looking at these large initiatives, you've got poison pills in any one of these cities that could prevent, because you're looking at the city and you're looking at the county, and then, so as you roll this up, you can poison the citizen initiative pretty quickly. So I don't know that it's going to be a huge issue. It sounds really good on paper, but the practical is I don't see another citizen initiative.
So I will say that when Lisa and I attended, I don't know, it was a planning land use meeting, months ago, they did talk about this referendum, or this initiative and this bill, and the bill sponsor, remember his name? Dodd, yeah, so it was Representative Dodd who brought this bill. He worked with the groups that run these initiatives and referendums, and he worked with cities. And he says, I've done my best work because I've ticked off both parties, both sides. So, so there's that compromise in there. So there's good and bad for both the city or the local government and this group. And that's what I actually think he did a really good job doing the research to work with both groups. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not, but I don't think it was perfect
No,
to
no,
begin with.
and
but-
I may be leaning too heavily on one side of it. I just think that any time that you create barriers towards citizen referendums that make it, I mean, you've got California on the other side of the aisle, but when you look at this where you make it extremely complicated for a citizen grassroots to move forward on an initiative because they need hyper levels of organization to make this happen, it gets really tough for the citizens to have a voice outside of their elected officials.
And then when they do vote by mail, that makes them one more level of difficulty.
And what made it great about this bill that also allowed cities to respond to whether inaccurate information. Before, you couldn't push out any information that would argue the other side, right? So if you have an initiative coming out there and it's just riddled with incomplete or inaccurate information, we couldn't respond back using our city email, city resources, or
Right,
anything like
right.
that. So the change now is we can respond directly to it, but what we also can do is post all the information. So if this council made a decision, and then there's some initiative for referendum against that decision, we can put on the website all the information that you used as a resource to come to the decision you did, so all residents can find out that information on their own, do the homework on their own, so it's out there on our website. Now, alternatively, you need to post the other information and make links to the other information that's out there as well, right?
And don't get me wrong, it does address some of the issues that cities have had to face where they've been effectively a gag order and they just have to take whatever mud is slung at them regardless of what the facts are. I think that's a great provision. I just don't like and by the way, you need to do one more thing that's extremely complicated for you to accomplish without all the organization. I just don't see citizen initiatives moving forward after this. Unless they do something so egregious that everyone is up in arms, and it just strikes me as very, very tough.
Don't do anything egregious, Councilmember McGowan.
I'm not the one. I'm not the one I'm worried about.
So can we have this is ordinance number 2019-20. Do I have a motion on it?
Motion to approve.
And I'll second it.
A motion approved and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Ivy and going to my right.
Aye.
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 Aye, but I would like to note that there is some concern with some of us that this creates a bunching of high-density housing in two areas, which would create disproportionate districts. So we ought to be contemplating making a change to it
Yes, but I would
sooner rather than later.
But I would point out that that's actually the purpose for the districts, is that you have to have participation from all four. And so this prohibits a certain area in the city to run an initiative that would affect the entire city. So it's actually, the districts are disproportionate in that way and in the type of housing and in the type of properties that are in the district. But these districts are created for the purpose of requiring participation and voices from throughout the entire city.
But we are furthering what George pointed out, that the whole situation makes the ability to do a citizens initiative almost impossible,
It's true.
which
Not
I
saying
disagree
impossible,
with.
just highly organized.
Well, almost impossible.
All right, fair enough.
Same thing.
Which I disagree with, but from a practical standpoint, have little choice but to accept. So I voted for it because I think we have to do something.
And the state
But I
doesn't
don't
let us
like
get
it.
out of it. No. I don't like it either. I'm with you on that one.
So it passed 5-0. Let it be noted that there's some exclamation points or some explanatory points from some of the council members, but all right, let's move on to item number 4 on the agenda. This is a product purchase and indemnification agreement for school crossing remote control devices. Chief, did you want to talk about this?
Yes, thank you. So, just going back in time again, talking a little bit about the history of this, which I think everybody here is probably familiar with. This was driven from basically from the need up. So crossing guards wanting a safer way to activate lights and turn them off without having to get out of their cars, go through snow, fall over and get splinters in their hands and stuff from the poles. So going back to Mayor Cutler, he tried to take this on, try to find some solutions that we could use. We found some solutions out there, but they're very, very expensive. So we kind of went to work. Randy Randall put together something, and we tried that out. And then he decided that he didn't want to do that because he's not an engineer. So I reached out to these two gentlemen here, Dave Jensen and Calvin Carlson, who I've known for a number of years. They're electrical engineers, work for West Test Engineering, doing work for the military, testers for fighter aircraft. Asked them if they would be interested in looking into it and see if they can come up with something that might work for us that would be reasonably priced but easy to use. And so they've actually been working on this for quite some time. We've come up with a few iterations of it. We were trying to get a system where they could get some feedback as far as the crossing guard could get some feedback to know whether the light was on or off or functioning properly. And I'll let them kind of talk about some of that. In looking at what we're proposing here, and I had a discussion with Dave Jensen about this agreement, and this is a very limited scope that they're doing this on at this time. Dave's concern to me was that if he's required to have insurance and pay for insurance year after year after year, it's just not worth it for him to, he'd be going in the hole, paying $300 a year for insurance until we stop using it. So he expressed that to me, that it just doesn't make financial sense for them to do that kind of insurance. But let me, which one of you guys want to talk about it? Dave? Maybe they can explain a little bit of what they've developed and some of the problems they ran into with the feedback.
Okay, so
Just introduce your name for the record.
Dave Jensen.
Thanks, Dave.
So initially, we came up with the first prototype, which was a matter of just having a remote control that there was a receiver on the pole that you would push the button and it would activate the lights and turn them on, and then you would push the button to deactivate it and it would turn them off. But we felt like there was a little bit of an issue there because even though it had a range from one end of the crossing guards to the other end, there was no way, if you were at the far end, that you could tell if the light that was facing the opposite direction was really on or not. So we were kind of concerned maybe for the safety, if for some reason it failed and the light didn't go on, no one would know that. So we tried to design another receiver inside it that would transmit from the box. So the remote would transmit to that, and then that receiver would transmit on a different frequency back to the remote, and a lot like a key fob. And we were partially successful. I don't know for sure if it was the components we chose or what, but it only was accurate about 95% of the time. It seemed like if we did it about 10 or 15 times, once in a while it wouldn't capture it. And so we felt like that was unacceptable. We didn't want to do that because it felt like the risk was too high. So we had proposed to just use the remote to, they could drive by and click it on and verify it's on, and go together and click it on, verify it's on, turn it off, and that always works. Plus with their visual check, they would know that it's operating properly as well. Now, there's a couple other things. I guess UDOT on Main Street put in some solar panels which operate completely different. Ours had it tied into the 120 volts that's on the pole for the other ones. With the solar panels, they just have a relay that comes down and closes the relay, so it's self-powered. So it would require a different unit to be able to operate those type of fixtures. So in further discussions with them, we talked about something that would be more efficient maybe is to, rather than have the remote control, put it on a timer basis, so it would come on at a certain time each day. Now there are some commercial ones that are similar to sprinkler timers that are on a weekly basis, but we had proposed that we could set it up on a year thing and use like a USB flash drive or something, and you could program the year out, and if there's special days you wanted to come off or on, you could change it at any time and just go up and plug it in and reset it, and it would come on at that predetermined time each day for however long you wanted it to come on. So we talked about that, so Paul would come and talk to us, see if we do it, and so we've done that, but we also were trying to do it, well, we're basically doing it for Paul because he's a good friend of ours, and then also we want to do it at a low cost because he wanted it fairly inexpensive. So we were trying to get him for about, I think, $300 a unit, which would be about $600 a school, which had very little profit in it for just those few. So when we decided, when we talked with Lisa and thought we'd have to have some kind of a liability policy, which we checked several different insurance companies, it was like $300 or $400 a year for that liability thing. And the whole project, we were, I mean, not even counting labor and things, we were only going to make, $1,000 or something, a couple $1,000. So it just didn't seem feasible for us to go on. That's why I had expressed my concern to Paul if we needed the liability policy. It probably wasn't really justified for us to do. But in terms of liability, if they use the unit, I mean, we've got the units. If you use the units and do a visual verification, I don't think a liability would be such an issue. But that's kind of the gist of it. If you've got any questions or want to know any more details.
Any questions for
Have you got
Dave?
anything to add, Cal?
Calvin?
Everyone's looking down at Robin.
Just a comment that it's exciting to see creative problem solving and someone willing to just tackle something that could be done, but seemed, to be made harder than it needed to be. So thank you very much for your work on that.
What's that? Manual operation, where you can override. Oh yeah, if anything failed, there was a manual switch. Right now, you go up and you hit the knife switch to turn them on, and it was designed such that if anything didn't work in the remote or anything, they could always go turn it on and off independently, so it didn't rely on the remote at all. So
And
it was.
And it's probably not doing any more of a liability because they do go off once in a great while. I mean, if you've done crossing guard for very long, it doesn't take you very long to figure out that all of a sudden the traffic speeded up. And so then you call an officer quickly and they come over and
Fix the light.
and turn their lights on and sit there to slow the traffic down. So
Yeah.
it's really not any different than what we have now. But a couple of years ago we did, or a few years ago, we did have a couple of crossing guards that were injured because when they plow the snow to the side of the road, you've got to kind of climb up and over, and those poles that they were on were covered with slivers, and they both ended up in the emergency room getting slivers removed from catching themselves on the poles. So I feel like if it stops one accident, we'll have really saved a lot of money.
Well, we were having a conversation earlier tonight about asking the question, even if we've gotten no as an answer in the past. And I just think this is such a great example of, keep asking the question. There's a problem, let's solve it. And hopefully this solution can get spread around to other communities as well. So, thank you.
So as far as our agreement we have here, unless you can make more from your product, carrying the insurance just isn't worth it. Is the bottom line is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So in
Okay.
terms of the agreement, that's section 11.
Yeah, I was reading it. Chief, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I just want to point out too that we went to them to help with this project, and they put a lot of time and effort into it and money. They did have some circuit boards printed up for it, and so they do have a system that's ready to go, but again, it's not what we had hoped for with that feedback on the remote systems. So we do have that. It does have a manual override, so you can just operate it like we already do now. If the city decides to go ahead with this, we would put them on 4th East and Parish, of course not on Main Street. So, and we are looking into what's commercially available right now. I've reached out to Utah Safety and Supply to see what they've got, and my rep hasn't got back with me. He was going to try to find some things, but I think we're going to find that it could be a system where it's similar to a sprinkler system timer on there, but I don't think those would work with the solar. I think most of the systems out there are designed to have that 120 power coming in.
So at one point in time, we had an inkling that this was likely to spread and become a business. I guess I'm perceiving that that's probably not gonna happen.
Well, I think that was entertained, and you guys can talk to that if you'd like.
We thought there was a possibility of that happening maybe, when we first decided to do it, yeah.
But-
When we did initially, we were just doing first.
But you don't think, you no longer think that way?
Well, unless we go to the timer phase with the yearly option, I think it's maybe possible. We want to do a little more investigation to see what other districts have, other towns have, to decide if we think there's a viable product that would be designed. If it was, then we would potentially pursue that.
So the options that I'm aware of that are available out there are your basic timer, which you're going to have times when you got early out, you might have a holiday or something, or something that just you can't really time for on those things. You've also got a system where you can, from a remote location through wires, basically, tell all the lights in the city to come on or go off at a certain time. So you control them centrally through a computer. Let's see, is there another system out there?
Your phone.
Oh, yes, so you purchase basically a Wi-Fi phone system, so to speak, that would attach to the pole, so you're paying a monthly fee to run that. And that's one of the systems we looked at early on, and it's just a lot of cost for that. It adds up. So that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of at this position now where we have, how many units do you guys have that are ready to go right now, pretty much? So 6 boxes. So they've got 6 boxes that are ready to go right now with the circuit boards that they ordered, the boxes and everything that we could just wire in. But we're not ready for they're not ready for any kind of a timing system. We did talk about them coming up with a system where, like, we could program them with a jump drive or something, showing the entire school year and days that are going to be off and so on and so forth. But that's just in concept right now.
So, any other questions? Obviously, I don't see how we can vote on an agreement that they're not going to sign, so I'm not sure where we're at on this. I mean,
Well, I think what they're requesting is for you to eliminate section 11. That's their request. So
Yes.
you could approve it, eliminating section 11. There would still be an indemnification clause, there just wouldn't be the insurance.
thanks, Lisa, for clarifying. So that's, council, the options you have available.
So
Do you have any other ideas?
So by eliminating that, we become the carrier on the insurance. So we talk to our carrier, are they okay with us taking on a prototype product? Will it change any of our rates, anything like that?
No, we have not. The insurance issue just came up today, but, like I said, there's still the indemnification, so we would have an entity to go after. It's just the extent of the backing of that entity.
And it's not really any different than what we already have, because it's on our own lights. Our own lights go off now. So we're not adding any more of a risk, because like I said, every
And-
so often now, they don't work anyway.
What
It's not very often.
What the chief said, though, is where I feel a little bit of a pause. You said you still want to go out and explore what other options are available more thoroughly. And so if we were to pass the change and this agreement as written with that amendment, that still doesn't obligate us to the purchase. It's just that this would then be the language if you chose that this would be the product.
Actually, the agreement does obligate us to an initial purchase of 6 boxes.
So I guess
and 6
my only question is, do you feel ready for that commitment, Chief? We've been through this whole process with them, but then you said, I still want to go check what the other.
That's for the Main Street ones that are on solar.
Oh, okay. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's for all of them to see what's available out there. Like I say, I reached out to our rep a couple weeks ago. I haven't heard anything back from him. I've done a little bit of Googling, looking around. I don't know that there's anything out there that I found so far that is gonna fit our need, but we're gonna keep looking. So I guess right now is, we would just wanted to bring this to the council to see if you wanted to go ahead and take the risk with this and do it, or we can just keep looking for the time being.
And if I could, what we discussed as staff is there has been a lot of work done by these two, that we do want to recognize the R&D and the effort they put in, that instead of just handing them a check for $1,500 without a product for all the work they've done, well, let's take the product and try it out. So as staff, we feel somewhat obligated to still compensate them for their time that they put into this. So we just decided, well, let's get the six devices and the 6 remotes, get something out of it, but still explore other options. But that way we've contributed to their time, and some of it anyway. Let's get the devices out of it. So we will take on the liability to, for the most part, but we'll continue exploring other options, and who knows, maybe it works out really well. But yes, it is definitely a prototype, but I think we're willing to take on that risk because, again, as Councilmember Meekum said, it's not much of a change. The risk here is, I don't know these two.
Okay.
But I trust that they know what they're doing based on their background and work history. So
Having reviewed the design fairly carefully, I can tell you from the electrical engineering standpoint, there are 50 ways to skin a problem. This is a very low-cost component, pretty robust component choice. I'm not worried about the product failing due to design. I'm not. And the type of components that have been selected are really pretty robust. We're not doing anything exotic, new, or cutting edge on this. It's pretty bare metal. I'm satisfied that if we were to approve the purchase of these, even given the issue of the transmitter receiver not necessarily picking up the indicator light, I'm not overly concerned about the product failing in a mode that was due to bad design. I compliment you on it. I was looking at it and going, that's pretty unique on some of the ways you dealt with the issues. I would actually motion that we approve the product purchase and indemnification agreement as recorded, minus section 11, which would be the insurance carrying requirement.
Mayor, if I could make one more comment on this. So we would require, with this system, we would require our crossing guards to visually inspect to make sure that the lights are on when they turn it on. So we would require that.
I would second George's.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think it's fabulous, and as we're in the cold weather here on the 1st of October, the sooner we can get something in so that our crossing guards are not as liable to be injured, the better off we are. So thank you, and good timing.
Let's take a vote then. You ready? Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Going to the right.
Are you okay with me voting, Lisa? I mean, I didn't know whether I should or not.
Well, if you were going to recuse yourself, you would have done it at the beginning.
Okay, then aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0.
Now you.
Calvin and Dave, having a business myself, appreciate all the time and effort you put in. I hope that what you've learned from this, maybe it can be a marketing opportunity for you for this to other areas, or what you've learned, that you can recoup some of your time. But so thanks for all you've done on it.
I'd like to add my thank you very much, and I do totally believe that you have saved somebody a serious injury. So, thank you.
Thanks. Let's go to item number 5. This is the item of, and thank you, Chief. This is appointment of interim finance director, and Brent or Lisa, or both of you want to talk about this?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of meetings ago, we approved the removal of the elimination of the Department of Management Services and added the Finance Department. But what we didn't do is we didn't put a delay on that. So in all honesty, we need to appoint an interim finance director at this time. So what we're Jake is officially the Administrative Services Director. That change occurred on September 22nd. So what we're asking to do is appoint Jake the interim finance director until we hire the new finance director. So with this appointment, again, it's just temporary. It's not, if we were to appoint him to be the permanent finance director, we would have to have another appointment, another vote. So you can't just slide into the role without coming back to council for that vote. So what we're doing right now is just doing a technicality, house cleaning, right, Lisa? And just appointing the interim finance director.
Yeah, because there are statutory duties for the finance director, I think it's advisable to have an interim. We're not in the budget cycle, but just in case any of those duties come up, I think it's a good idea that the city manager suggested.
As I met with Brent today, we went over schedule of getting a finance director, and as you know, we have to post it for 30 days, and that'll start, we're talking through the end of the month, right, Brent?
I will discuss the process at the city manager report.
Beautiful. So that's, but I thought that question could come up, but you'll get it in more detail. So that's what this resolution is. Any further questions, or do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a motion and a second? Let's do a roll call vote, starting with the Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this is the minutes review and acceptance from the September 17th work session that we had with the Youth Council and the September 17th City Council minutes. Do I have any changes or comments on those minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
Second.
Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Next is City Council reports. I did not assign anyone tonight, so any of you are welcome, but I would assign because I said 2 weeks ago that I'd just like to start getting reports, so maybe at our next council meeting, Councilwoman Ivy, Councilwoman Fillmore, do you guys want to report for us on your events at next council meeting, or is that not a good timing for
My museum people will be coming on our agenda anyway. Is it next time, I believe?
Yes. Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Okay.
During the city council portion.
Yep.
And we're going to have a work session with the Parks and Rec Committee, and you've stayed very updated on the great work that they've been doing. So I think that's been reported on regularly, and I can just say tonight, as far as Rec District, the primary undertaking there is we are still in the middle of large master plan efforts. So we hired a consultant and did some initial surveying and public outreach, and we approved last time to spend another chunk of money to deepen that level of surveying to a more quantitative versus qualitative survey, and we'll continue to dig deeper and write up a great plan for the future of the Rec District.
The Landmarks Commission did meet, but they're struggling because they have not enough members attending. We could use a couple more people on the Landmarks Commission so we can have a quorum on a regular basis.
I think
That's where they stand.
Okay, I'll look at that. I think there was one that was done, right? So, but
I think we're looking for 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And some have put in, have had friends that have expressed an interest. So that should be coming to you.
In relation to that parks work session, did we ever reach out to the tree board too? Were we talking about their recommendation for trees to be at that meeting, or we would, or did you think another meeting, Brent?
I was thinking another meeting, but we can definitely do that if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
Whitaker has their storytelling night here that night, so we can only fit in admin or downstairs.
So we have options in EOC or conference room. So.
The Whitaker storytelling will be at the cemetery on that occasion. Yeah.
Disregard.
Okay.
I'll just sneak out to go listen to the stories when it's time.
All right, so I will thank you for those comments, Councilwoman Ivey, Councilwoman Fillmore. And if any of the rest of you have anything pressing, will you please let me know as far as if you need to report it to the next meeting. We'll move to mayor's report. So I want to report on 2 or 3 things. Since the last council meeting, the chamber, Davis County Chamber, had a luncheon for all the mayors in the as part of their annual meeting with all the mayors and their members. And I went to that. It was a very good turnout by all the mayors. There was only a couple mayors missing. And they gave us all 4 minutes to report on the ongoings in our city. And I got buzzed off, and Mayor Talbot said, "Wilkinson, that's the most you've ever talked at one of these meetings." So I have something to uphold now there. But I reported what was going on in our city with elections, with the tree board, with Centerville Cares, and a couple of other things we had going on. So I probably was trying to report too many things in that meeting, but I wanted to get out to our county what was taking place in Centerville. The next thing was there was a COG meeting. This COG meeting was held at the Animal Control Center up there in Fruit Heights. So we took a tour of their facility and learned about the Animal Control Center. That's obviously a resource that there's many animals up there waiting to be adopted, mostly cats and dogs, but they have all sorts of other animals as well too.
Did you bring one home?
I didn't. We have a little dog at home right now, so that's enough. They had turtles too. I could have brought a turtle, but I would throw out there that at the COG meeting that if there is ever anything that you want me to present or something that needs to be presented at those COG meetings, they're always looking for items to put on the agenda. And so that's the 3rd Wednesday every month. They just like the items to go on the agenda a week before. So reach out to me if we ever need to get anything out there to all the other mayors and the county commissioners at the COG meeting. And then I want to remind you that this on October 7th, which is this coming Monday, is the volunteer dinner. On that volunteer dinner, it is an open house from 6 to 8. And so people will be coming and going. I plan on staying the whole time and thanking people, but I just wanted to let you know the format, so you could schedule your plans accordingly. Any questions for me? Great. If not, we'll go to the city manager's report.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So the follow-up to that is Lisa needs to know RSVPs. So if I can get that number either now or let Lisa know by tomorrow, that'd be great. So.
What if we've already RSVP'd?
Yeah, already did.
Pat yourself on the back.
If you have already, you're awesome. If you haven't, you're in trouble.
I already did, because Lisa tackled me in the hall.
So she's doing it one by one at this point with you. So
She sent an email out, I responded, so.
okay.
Well, she sent a letter, I responded.
Okay, so that's good. So she did say some responded, but she just asked me to remind you that if you have not, please do so. So the other 2 items I have is the league update. At the last meeting, I told you I was going to discuss one item or a couple items from the league conference. One item I actually want to emphasize was one of the keynote speakers, Joe Maserati, because I can't remember his name. What's his name? Menakazi? That sounds great. Excellent presentation. Really what it did is just trying to look at how we land use in a different way when we're talking about our revenue and our finances. In fact, let me pull it up a little bit. Well, let me break it down. Instead of just thinking about the sales tax revenue a property generates, but to look at the overall revenue a property generates, including the property tax. So we broke it down and took like a Walmart, for example, and in no way am I knocking Walmart in this scenario, but Walmart generates quite a bit of sales tax revenue for the city, but the footprint of the store is relatively small when you look at the footprint of the entire property that it's on. And if you look at a building such as MTC, it's generating quite a bit of property tax, but has a smaller footprint. So what he did is so he's worked with Ogden, Salt Lake, West Valley, and he's from North Carolina. He's worked in a number of cities and just gave an example of how we use our land. And one of the things that was staggering for me is when he looked at actual roads is a small sliver, parking lots is the largest, and buildings itself was actually smaller than parking lots in how we use our land in a city, and is that really the best use of our land? So one of the arguments he uses, and we're actually in the process of doing it now, is looking at property tax versus sales tax. So right now, Corey ran some numbers for me in the sales tax, or the property tax that we generate on South Main Street, just as a starting point to look at it. And then what Jake and I are going to do is run the sales tax on South Main Street and look at what buildings, what's generating more revenue for the city. And I know that's not our primary focus, but it just helps you with your land use decision. So next, I also want to focus on the Parish Lane Gateway, the RDA, and what is that doing? I think that would be a really interesting to see because we have a lot of retail, but we also do have some commercial space. So we're just, as staff, we're running different numbers to see how are we using this, and it might be enlightening for us as decision makers to see, well, wait a minute, now maybe we should be focusing more efforts on these types of developments or these types of buildings and things like when we're talking about economic development particularly, but also land use, it's critical to know. So yeah, it was a fascinating presentation. I believe the league said it's going to be available, the video, and so we'll make sure that you all have a chance to have that video. I think it was actually a really interesting, different look. They had a presentation from a gentleman 2 years ago that was alternative, that was converse to that, arguing that the high-rise building in downtown Buffalo is worth less than John's Pizza on the corner that's in the historic downtown, which is, I actually saw a lot of flaws in that argument, but
Was that Chuck?
I think it was Chuck.
Chuck Moran.
Anyway, it was, but this was kind of the different argument saying, well, no, that high-rise building is actually a lot of value in the property tax that it brings into a community. So anyway, I just want to see those numbers. I think it would be fascinating to see in data-driven and help us make some more informed decisions. So again, it was a great conference. I really would encourage you all to attend. I think it's a great opportunity to just see what's being discussed and other challenges that cities are dealing with. Sometimes you find out that we're not unique in some ways, where somebody has been there, done that, and we can learn from them instead of us making those mistakes ourselves. So next time it comes around, I implore you to go. That'd be great.
For what it's worth, and I was not there, I have been the last 3, and they are well, I've been to probably the last 7, including the spring, and they are excellent.
You do good.
And
Good job.
I got some information and handouts that I'd requested that I will send you out by email as well too. I'll explain those as well too for a couple of things that were made an impact on myself.
So I have a question. Are we having our meeting next Tuesday on the 8th? And if so, what time?
Yes, and I believe at 6 p.m. is what, it was a challenge. So we had a lot of emails come back on when and where, and parks can't meet that early, so Leah, go ahead.
Parks was they're pretty cool.
Pretty flexible.
Yeah, they
So-
can meet whenever. I think it's just kind of down to council.
Okay, council, tell me what you want to do.
6 o'clock and try to keep it to an hour?
That's kind of what we were thinking. We wanted to kind of balance it out. We didn't want to force, since they regularly meet at 7, I didn't want to force it, and that's where Lee and I kind of came with the idea. Well, I came up with the idea. Sorry, Lee, I don't mean to throw you in as 6 as the compromise, but if that's a problem, then we can change that. But yeah, I want to keep it to an hour.
I think that works great. And then if there's pressing conversation still continuing, it can go a little later than that. And Stephanie will have to just excuse herself or choose between the two.
I kind of want to go to that too, so.
Well,
Because
I'd
on
like to
Saturday
go
as
to
well,
that
if
too,
you can't
so
move
I'd
by
like
Tuesday.
so I kind of
Yes.
like to have a hard stop before that.
And then that allows the parks to do whatever other agenda items.
Yeah,
Well,
Seven.
meet us over at the cemetery and hold a meeting there.
Could be enlightening. And anyway, okay,
So we'll
great.
do it at 6, and we
And
got,
then if
just
it's
got to
this
finish
cold
it
or
by
not.
10 to 7.
Yes.
So you can
Agreed.
get up to the cemetery, right? Okay.
Okay, and the last item I have is the finance director recruitment, the item you've been waiting for. So Jake and I went over kind of the schedule and what we think a timeline that would be appropriate for this recruitment. Correct me if you have any differing ideas, but this is what we have. So the job description is good to go. Where we're wanting to post this is, which we'll post tomorrow, with approval of this process, we'll post tomorrow. And the places we'll post it is Utah GFOA, that's the Utah Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, which is the international, UCMA, which is our city management group, UCMA, and ICMA, which is the international group for city manager, which there's a lot of finance directors a part of that, finance people a part of that. Utah League of Cities and Towns, Department of Workforce Services. The question that Jake and I had, CPA firms. So I asked the mayor this earlier. Where do CPAs go to look for jobs? Question for Councilmember Ince or Mayor. Where do CPAs go to look for jobs?
This sounds like the setup to a bad punchline.
It does. It does.
Let's see what they can come
Thought
up
about
with.
The UACPA,
Say again?
the UACPA.
UACPA. You get that, Jake?
And I reached out to our president today, so
Okay.
I got some other,
Great, we'll get together. So we'll post it in a number of places. So we thought about Deseret News. How do any of you feel? It's quite expensive to post in Deseret News. And I actually haven't seen any recruitments come from Deseret News, just to be honest with you.
I think you can be more targeted than that.
DWS, I think, is far more effective sometimes.
Even the UACPA makes me curious to ask the question. I mean, I assume we are planning on expecting government finance experience.
So that's GFOA.
Right.
Yeah.
But so
wh-
how common is it to cast a broad net with CPAs to have a lot of?
There's a fair amount of experience there, I think.
That's great then.
I know a handful of
It's-
CPA friends.
I will tell you that at the end of the day, I suspect that isn't where we'll get our person.
yeah.
But why not
but-
throw the net there?
We ought to throw the net there.
Okay, great.
Right, thank you. So Jake will draft up a blurb, so I'm one that don't just put out the job description, but have something that's a little more than the technical side, but come join the family, you get to decide, how strategize and anyway, just more the narrative and the qualitative, the qualitative approach to landing someone. But we'll include a job description and a link. Applications will be sent to Jake. Reviewing applications, what we're proposing is closing this October 31st. So at the end of the month, make it easy date for many to remember. And then our meeting on November 6th, we'll all go into a closed session as a council to review those applications. I want everyone here to have input on who we select to interview. And I'll get to why that's the case. So November 7th, we'll call those to schedule the interviews, and we'd like to schedule those interviews for November 18th and November 19th. But we'll schedule the interviews November 7th. You want to make sure you give enough time, because if we're talking about casting a wide net throughout the country, we want to make sure we keep our plane ticket costs low and who we're bringing from out of state. But you want to give some time for those to rearrange their schedules to accommodate. Scheduling interviews for the week of November 18th. Interview panelist. This is what we're proposing for the interview panel. It would be the mayor, 2 council members, myself, Jake, and Jolene as a staff of the finance department, and potentially Chief Child and Lisa Romney, one or the other or both. Haven't really got there. So right now we're at 8, and I think that's actually a pretty good panel and a good mix. And I'm hoping that with the mayor and 2 elected officials, we'll feel comfortable about that. And again, it's really the ultimate decision is going to be here, because what we're going to do is after we interview November 18th and 19th, we'll go into a closed session November 19th at our regularly scheduled meeting, and then discuss it again as a council. And then the next day, we'll start doing the background checks on that candidate. This is the hope. And then offer will be extended at the end of that week on November 22nd. Now, if we need a second interview, I don't mind having second interviews. I like those to be flexible. Determining what the cause for that second interview is, then we can morph into what we need and who should be on that panel at that time. And if we extend the offer November 22nd, we give them the weekend to think about it. They accept the job the following Monday. 2 weeks would be December 9th would be the start date, would be the earliest that I can think of. Unless they have some extenuating circumstances, they must stay for 4 weeks, which does happen sometimes, so. So that's the plan. Did I go really fast? You ready for the hard dates? I'll give you
Well,
the.
I was going to have you back up to your first closed session where you wanted to have everyone review resumes. Is that including is there a pre-sort activity for minimum eligible qualifications before we see those?
Of course.
Okay.
No, we want you to see them all. We want you to
Well,
see
I
all
wasn't sure.
70 that we get,
No,
and 50 of them aren't qualified.
So the tag on to that is if it's minimum eligible qualifications, am I getting that packet before that closed meeting?
So yeah, that's a good question. So, yes, so October 31st will be the close, and we'll have, give us a couple of days and we'll sort through them, yes. So you'll have a couple of days.
So
absolutely.
what I'm asking is I would like to be able to review the resumes individually before I go to a closed meeting to discuss.
Correct.
I want to be trying to do that as a group review.
So November 6th is a Wednesday meeting due to the election, so our hope is to have it to you Monday. So we'll have it to you Monday, that'll give you Monday evening, Tuesday all day, Wednesday day. I mean, you have jobs and responsibilities, I know, but.
And when is the meeting on the 7th?
And an election to deal with. I'm sorry?
When is the meeting on the 7th?
November 6th. It's just it'll be the 5:30, right?
I thought we were doing a closed meeting on the 7th.
So no, you'll do the closed meeting on the 6th, which is our regular scheduled. We'll call the candidates on the 7th of those that we've selected to interview. So let me go through the dates just because I know I'm all over the place. October 2nd, we'll post. That's tomorrow. October 31st is the deadline. We'll go into closed session November 6th. Staff will schedule the interviews on November 7th. The interviews will occur on November 18th and November 19th. That's a Monday and Tuesday. We'll go into a closed session again on November 19th to propose who we would like to
What kind
extend.
of hours are you talking about on the 18th and 19th?
That's what we'll need to get with the panel and figure out what the flexibility is. Again, it all kind of depends on how many we select. If we select 12, then we're going to have some challenges. If we select 5 or 6, then I think that's workable. Kind of depends on where we go. And again, if we need to schedule it out a little bit farther, this is really trying to streamline as fast as possible to get someone in place in a little over 2 months. But we can extend things out. I just don't want to extend it out too long.
I think it's a great idea, and then we'll just see what we get. And
Yeah.
then go from there.
Yep, just trying to have a plan, and then we'll deal with the complications or challenges later. And so November 18th, 19th interview. 19th, we go into the closed session to finalize the candidate that we'd like, decide on. And then staff will conduct the background checks the 20th to the 22nd. And we extend the offer on the 22nd. 3 days enough to do background checks, right, Lisa? If we do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday background checks and reference check?
It depends how extensive you want. Sometimes if you want the police to go talk to their neighbors, it's a week, but for the city manager, it was expedited
For a finance director, I would want a high level of assurance of the character of the individual, just being blunt. But to me, that's the more extensive of the two.
Sure, and we can do that too. I agree.
Yes.
Thanks for not doing an extended one for me or doing a brief.
Well, you were rented on. Yeah.
It was too far to drive.
Lisa tried to cover her mic for that. She says, we already knew all the bad stuff. I just want to get that on the minutes. Anyway, so are we okay with the general idea of that schedule? And the panel is more what I'm concerned about. Are you okay with that idea of a panel? I think it's a good representation of staff, elected officials. Honestly, when I met with department heads and proposed the idea that we have their own separate interview, they didn't want anything to do with that. So they said, you know what, finance director, you got it.
So you're saying
We're
last
good."
time we cured them of that process?
I think so. Well, for this position, they actually,
No,
they
I-
liked being involved for the city manager, but
I'm just
in this
giving you a hard
position.
time. I agree. I think it's appropriate that, and the panel says is, I think,
That's what we
Right.
went through that process to hire you for.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
All right, so that's how we'll proceed. So our plan is October 15th, our next meeting, that we'll have, Jake and I will have the general idea for questions completed that you can review and have input on and make sure we're asking questions that we should be asking. So I would like your input on those questions as well. So we won't discuss them necessarily at a city council meeting, but we could discuss it as an agenda item or a work session topic if we have time, if that's okay.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good.
thank you. That's all I have.
Do we
Thank you,
happen-
Brent.
Do we happen to have an update on the fire station completion date?
I don't have one.
I heard they're running a
anybody else?
little behind a little about 3 weeks behind.
So last
That's
I
not
heard was
official.
mid-October,
Right.
October 15th.
I
We're
heard
probably
too.
looking closer towards the end of October.
But now it's a little bit closer towards the end. It might be late another,
That's
at
not
least 1 week
official,
after that.
That's what I heard.
if you want to stay for 5 minutes, I can text the chief. I'm just kidding.
I drove by today and the chief wasn't there. I was searching for him, but, so I could call him too.
I seen him by there today. He
Did you
didn't
see
have
him?
his sign, but I thought maybe he was gonna get one. He was out by the sidewalk.
Yeah. Any other questions? Things to bring up? If not, look for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council's adjourned. Thank you.
It's only 8:19. We have 2 more hours to go. Let's go.
We start at 5:30 though. Right.
Well, we're still going on YouTube. We're good.